Welcome back to another episode of Capes and Tights, a comic book and pop culture podcast. That's Adam. I'm Justin. We're back for another episode. Ghostbusters Afterlife. But before we get started, obviously, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, follow us, Search Capes and Tights, website, capesandtights.com, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all those things. Hate saying those things, but subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff, because that's how we, I was going to say, Adam, that's how we make a living. That's not how we make a living, though. But we do this for fun, really. But we have a sponsor. It's Roxxon Energy Group. No, just kidding. But yeah, so we're here to talk Ghostbusters. So Ghostbusters came out last year, right? Now we can actually say that. It's kind of weird to say because we know we're only a few months.
It is weird to say.
Last year, November 19th, 2021, that dropped into theaters, and that was still during. I mean, we're obviously still in this pandemic, but that was during some of the it was like some of the most treacherous part of this pandemic, really, with cases on the rise and things like that. And it still did $197.3 million in the box office. So I will say people were excited for Ghostbusters Afterlife. I will say they did a great job with cutting the trailers, I think, all those things. But it hit digital January 4th. Adam and I were talking about doing one back on that time. We both watched it. We were ready. Some things happened. We couldn't do it. Then we moved it to a different date again. Things happen. We do this for fun, so we don't let it control our lives. And then now we're finally like, okay, let's do this. Let's get this done and over with. Ghostbusters Afterlife, because I want to talk about it. I mean, I like the movie, so
always fun too, because I've had some time to think about it now, and that's always nice.
And I didn't watch it a second time, but I did skip through and look at some different parts of it. And I did watch Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters again, not last week, like I said I was going to last week, but I did watch it a little while ago, like a couple minutes of it, just to kind of like find that funny. The Ghostbusters, when I was watching it, I have it on in 4K, right? Which is stupid. I think we've talked about this before. 4K from the 80s is not 4K from 2021, but watching it, some of the special effects, there's the gargoyles that are on top of the building. You can see the lines of the street through the gargoyle. And so I thought that was kind of funny. Like they superimpose these gargoyles on a building that are not really there, but then you can see the lines on the street. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cheap special effects back when the original Ghostbusters came out. But the critics didn't like this movie that much, Adam. 62% on Rotten Tomatoes. 95% on audience score.
That tracks with me.
And a 7.5-ish on IMDb. So that to me is like, it makes sense to me why I think it's more of a fan service movie anyway.
Definitely.
But when a single mom and her two kids arrive in a small town, they begin to discover their connection to the original Ghostbuster and secret legacy of their grandfather left behind. That's a little snippet from the internet. But I was going to run over the cast, but I'll just say Carrie Coon was great. Finn Wolfhand, McKenna Grace, Paul Rudd was in it. Logan Kim, Josh Gad was Muncher. I was a little small spot of J.K. Simmons, which is funny because I wrote the note down when I was watching it. I was like, oh, cool, J.K. Simmons, but I wrote J.K. Rowling. And I'm like, yeah, it's definitely not J.K. Rowling. And I'm really glad J.K. Rowling was not in this movie.
Yep. That would have been a strange connection there. Yeah.
But to do the whole thing, spoilers from this point on. We do see Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson came in there, Annie Potts. We'll get into the Sigourney Weaver part because it's kind of fun part. And then Ivan Reitman, who is the son of what's his name, Reitman, who did the first one, right? And
yes. There's Ivan, the first one. Is Ivan's the son?
Wow, I had this written down. This is pretty funny. You might be right about that. So here's the deal. Yep. We're a pop culture podcast. We love this and stuff like that. I'm not a Ghostbuster head.
I am not either.
So Ivan Reitman, and he actually passed away. That was recently, actually in February. February 12th, Ivan passed away. His son is Jason
Reitman. That's it.
So so his dad, Ivan, Jason Reitman is the son of Ivan, who was a part of the first team to make the first movie. He made the second movie. Him and another dude were the body doubles for the CGI for Egon Spangler.
Yes.
Because of the passing of Egon Spangler in real life. So that's pretty sad, but glad they were able to introduce that into this movie a little bit.
Me too.
For sure.
I mean,
it's so cool. So those are the lists of the characters that are the cast in it. We'll get more into it as we talk about it. The first thing I wanted to start off with, Adam, on this is I don't want to crap on the reboot, quote unquote, from a few years ago with the all female cast. The world has already crapped on it enough. I don't think we need to see her. I will say I don't want to crap on it because I haven't seen it. I never watched it. There was no pushing me to see it. Like when this movie hit the trailer came out, I'm like, I've got to see this movie. Yep. When that trailer came out, there was nothing saying to me, you have to see this movie.
No.
There wasn't anything selling it. It was a reboot of sorts. And the reason I'm saying that now, and I want to get this out before we go any further, is some movies I believe don't need to be rebooted. Okay.
Yep.
Your Back to the Futures, your Indiana Joneses to me don't need to be rebooted.
Yep.
Some reboots are good. Spider-Man Homecoming was a great reboot. I think Batman Begins, the newer Dawn of the Dead from 2004, Ocean's 11, the Planet of the Apes movies. I think all of those were great, quote unquote, reboots of their original movies. And those are just some of them. I mentioned the whole don't need to be rebooted. Back to the Future, Indiana Jones. But if either one of those movies decided to do this route or the Jurassic World kind of route where it's like, it's part of the universe, we're just in the future.
Yep.
I would be 100% on board because this is the way you reboot a movie, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Soft reboot. You connect the worlds together. You don't say those didn't exist. Yes. But now we can move forward with a younger generation. The same thing I said, if Doc Brown's kids wanted to reboot or be the part of the reboot of Back to the Future, 100% on board about that. Indiana Jones, if all of a sudden a long lost kid of his wants to be the new Indiana Jones and move on, 100% okay with that. Don't reboot it and do a new Marty McFly or a new Indiana Jones. That's stupid. And that's what they tried to do with the all-female cast Ghostbusters and tried to kind of reboot it. This is a reboot, but it's really a soft reboot sequel. And this is the way to do it, in my opinion.
It is, and it's funny. I totally do. And I was going to say, actually, my wife and I were talking right before we started, and I came up and was same as you. I haven't seen, full disclosure, the other movie, but I've seen lots of like the reboots and little videos about it. And my one thing I thought was really interesting, I told Annie, was I felt like the vibe in that was not only unrelated kind of, but the need to say like, oh, now we've got these like strong female Ghostbusters. Is the original movie already had strong characters that were female. So that accomplished nothing, because Sigourney Weaver's character is badass in the both of the Ghostbusters movies. Annie Potts' character is amazing. So like, and that's what we were talking beforehand, is why not take those female characters and show how they've remained strong characters.
Exactly.
And so it worked so much better. Annie watched it with me, and same thing. She was like, I'm ready for Ghostbusters again, like big time.
Well, this is like, so Carrie Coon as Callie Spangler, the mom, badass character. She showed her strength and showed her character as ability. Mckenna Grace, so it was Phoebe Spangler, the daughter, basically the main character of the movie in a sense, is unbelievable for her age. Fantastic. She was in Designated Survivor. She was the daughter. And so I saw her, I was like, you could tell by like the way she talked. And I was like, who the heck is she? I do this a lot. Taylor and I'm sitting there, I have my phone out there on IMDb and trying to figure out where do I know them from? And she kicked butt. I mean, obviously we know Finn Wolfhard is in Stranger Things, so he's been a great dude. Paul Rudd, obviously. So the casting of this movie was great. And they were able to, like I said, soft reboot sequel, the original movies with strong female characters, like you mentioned. So Carrie Coon did a great job. McKenna Grace did a great job. Celeste O'Connor, the Lucky Domingo, the girl that's hanging out with Finn, did a great job. You didn't have to do it as let's like get rid of all the old characters and create these new characters that take the place of the other ones as an all female cast. I think there's a way to do it too. I mean, there is a truth that we did cast a lot more stronger male roles in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but I think we're getting better at it as a world. And this is, I think, the way to do it, to intertwine and create strong female roles within the normal sequence of the movie.
And I think that's exactly the point, is to say too that like it was the 80s and 90s were different, but that doesn't mean that there weren't strong women. It's better to now say there's this young generation that's coming in. They are, and like who's to say that any of those female characters are done with Ghostbusters if they decide to keep this going? They could have a killer role going forward. I'd love to see more Sigourney Weaver.
And so I want to put a pin in that, because I do think that we need to talk about the end of the post-credit scenes are fun. Talk about the future of this. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up, but we'll obviously there's a lot to talk about in between. I will say, I'm going to go over it again. McKenna Grace as Phoebe Spangler was unbelievable. I hate to say, the young people, but she's young. She's in her teens, early 20s, or right below 20s, or 18, 19, 17, whatever how old she is. And she was a great, strong lead role. She acted well. She seemed, it was normal. It was not this bad acting. It was just great thing. Logan Kim. We're going to bring out Logan Kim on this because his name is Podcast on the show. It's unbelievable. I love the fact that they're like, I'm recording a podcast. And he says what Paul Rudd is the one listener. He's like my one subscriber.
Or when he's like, hey, they call me Podcast. Like, why do they call you Podcast? Oh, because I do a podcast. Who gave you that name? Me. Like,
it's unbelievable. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's like me.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Carrying around the recorder and like,
yes, absolutely. And so it was awesome to seeing that. And when he did talk about Paul Rudd was the one subscriber to his podcast, and he like, episode 46. That's when you really got your stride.
It is.
It was great. And then the one thing I love about this movie too is like I feel like it gave me a Goonies vibe. Like the idea of kids in caves hunting for things. Like there's the Ghostbusters aspect of it, but it also had this like small town summer Goonies exploring and going on an adventure vibe, which is really cool because I love the Goonies. And I think that, that's another movie that I would want to see rebooted, but almost you could do a sequel of sorts with.
Absolutely.
And move forward in timeline. Like, my grandparents were the Goonies and stuff.
Oh, you could totally do that.
And so I love that, like with the going in the caves and the fight. I like the idea of being in a new town too. It's not like they're just trying to fit in where they live. It's like the ghosts aren't just the problem that they're dealing with, trying to fit in this house that's falling down and the loss of a family member and all that. So that was all cool too. So I like that it made it more wholesome of a story, kind of like the original movie was.
Agreed. And like you just said, I think we just talked about this with Peacemaker is it's that complete change of scenery where like it's jarring at first because it starts in New York City, which is what you're used to, and then boom, you're in a plain state. And and we will go into other scenes later, but it takes place in like a Walmart at one point. A lot of people, including you and me, can connect with that because a lot of us shop at Walmarts, not at bodegas in New York City. So like I love that. And like you said, and that plays in also to how it, how do you adapt to living in a different culture? And so that was fun, that whole part of it.
I feel like there's a mixture between filming, good scenes in middle America because it's cheaper to do. Like if you were to like film like this movie was filmed in Canada. And so like you could just go to a field in Canada and pretend like it's Oklahoma or Idaho or any of these places. And this gives them ability, but it's also probably way cheaper than trying to film in New York City or have sets that look like New York City or film in a city to make it seem like it's New York City. Because that's what they do a lot where it's like filmed in Boston, but they say it's New York City. And that aspect of it was pretty cool too, because it's like but it also brings us into a different world, like in a sense. Like it was not just them busting ghosts in New York City like the first movie. They're busting ghosts now, driving through an old town that the buildings are only as 1 story tall or 2 stories tall, not these skyscrapers, which was really cool. Speaking of the town, the mixture of practical effects and special effects. You and I have talked about this before, how amazing it is for you to do both of them. And it made me feel like the movies were filmed back to back in a sense. Like you have the ability to have, actual real like monsters and people talking to you. And then also the special effects. And even the special effects though were made to look like 80s special effects.
Exactly.
Like the blue lights and the things like that, like the lightning and the stuff coming off of some of these ghosts look like they were made in the 80s. And I'm like, you don't need to mess with that. Like, why do we need to make it look way more futuristic? If the ghost, it's a ghost. We don't know what ghosts look like. We don't know what all this stuff is. It's all fake. Why can't you just make it look like the original and make us happy? This movie wasn't made for a high school student.
No.
This movie was made for you and I. And so that's the point for us. We've seen that and we know what this looks like. So I'm okay with it looking like that. They don't have to make it look like someone's kids. Look at the cheesy special effects. Like we want that. I want that.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what I think they messed up with on Phantom Menace is they went so futuristically, not as much practical effects. And they made up for somewhat in the last 3 movies. They were able in the Star Wars world where they are the like kind of mixture between the two. But this was excellent. The special effects and practical effects.
It's like you said, I think what happened with the Star Wars prequels, it's just if you go too far, then it's like you said, then everything you're just known for like, hey, remember when stuff used to look like that? Whereas like the old Star Wars and say the Mandalorian, or in this case, like you said, the 2 Ghostbusters, like they feel like they work together and they fit together. Yeah.
Well, especially when a movie's made this far apart from each other.
Oh my gosh.
Like, so like, you know, it would back to relate to the Star Wars part. It was 15 years between movies. And when you have 15 years of practical effects and special effects growing and becoming better, you have a jarring thing. And that's why I'm always like, whenever someone asks me how you should watch the Star Wars movies, is I honestly say to people, you probably should watch them in the way they were created, not because that's the true traditional way to do it. It's because you gradually get better special effects.
Absolutely.
And if you go from all CGI episodes 1 through 3, and then you go to episode 4 and it's like fake weird CGI and small models and all that stuff, it's like, it's jarring. And so they were able to do the mix between, you could watch Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2, and watch this and be like, oh, they were filmed. You could tell they were filmed progressively, but like the special effects look similar. And that's was huge to me. And that's probably some of Jason Reitman trying to honor his dad a little bit too, about, you know, making it more. His dad was on set, by the way. Ivan was on set the entire time, and there was a little bit of special, like a clip from IMDb or one of the places that I watched right after the movie that said, you know how much pressure that is.
Oh my gosh.
Not only take over a franchise that your dad was very like pivotal of making, and now having him sit next to you and chirp in your ear, chirp in your ear about everything.
Yeah, exactly. Doing. Yeah. That's hilarious.
But he said it was good though too, because he didn't mess up on things.
Of course. And I watched a couple interviews with Jason Reitman. I mean, he's a fun guy to listen to. He definitely, like you said, he loves like respecting film that came before, and you know, and like you said, I mean, respecting how it was made. I saw an interview where he just said, so for him selfishly, he just likes to shoot these films to feel what it was like to shoot those films, which like I totally get. And
I could have sworn, again, this is me, I don't quote any of us on this, but like I could have sworn a number of years ago, before this movie was ever pitched or written or anything like that he actually swore that he wouldn't do anything in the Ghostbusters world, that was his dad's thing, and he didn't want to be known for that to be the next thing for him to be known for.
Sure.
But I'm guessing at some point, and I'm glad now that his dad passed in February, like it's like now he was able to do that. His dad was able to see it come to fruition on TV, on the screen, do the opening and all that stuff. And then now his dad was like, okay, cool, my legacy's continuing. And his dad was like, peace, I'm out of this world. No. Maybe his dad will show up in this next movie because of the
cameo appearance. I wonder if the other Ghostbusters coming out was like, he was like, I gotta read.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That could be it
for my dad, you know, because
Speaking of ghosts, there was a couple of people I talked to off the side, and I listened to one podcast, and they mentioned that they wish there was more ghost busting in the movie because the movie's called Ghostbusters, and there was not as much ghost busting like there was in the first movies. I thought there was a good mixture. I thought it was very good that the fact that there's a more story than just the ghost busting. I do like the fact that the granddaughter of Egon doesn't actually believe in ghosts to start off with, and so it's like, she's trying to do the you ever watch Ghost Hunters on sci-fi or whatever? And the whole point of TAP's organization is not to prove the existence of extraterrestrial life or prove the existence of spirits or anything like that. It's to disprove that, to say, hey, that's not that's the door creaking or it's the floorboard moving.
Right.
She does that a little bit in this movie too, whereas like at the very beginning, she's trying to disprove that they exist. But I do love, doesn't believe in ghosts, but when the ghost starts to play chess with her, she plays back.
Yeah.
I don't believe in any of this crap, but okay. I'll play chess with you.
I think that's, for me, was a good sign with movies like this, where like there were a few times where I was like, that was totally unbelievable and I don't care at all.
Yes,
and I think sometimes, you know, it's just a really fun movie where you're like, okay, sure, that's fine. Like,
exactly. Taylor and I, so on Monday, we rented a theater at Queen City Cinema Club of last week. We don't go out that often anymore. We thought maybe the stepping stone to going out right now again is to go somewhere where I can be private. So we go, we walk in, we get our private theater. Now it's our own little spot that we can sit in and watch a movie. And we ordered some food and they brought it in. It was great. It was a private little area, but we were able to go out and it was nice.
Sure.
We watched National Treasure, which is Taylor and I, it's like our guilty pleasure movie. We both love that movie. We love Nicolas Cage in that movie. But I find myself now on the 17th millionth time watching it, picking it apart. And I'm like picking it apart like it's supposed to be this award-winning movie that has mistakes. And I'm like, the reason why a lot of people don't like this movie is because they watched it and picked apart the movie like I did the first time.
You will ruin everything you love if you try to pick it apart.
I'm like, I don't understand why this would happen, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get past that. So these are the things that, yes, the whole idea that she doesn't believe in ghosts, but then she immediately plays chess with the ghost. We look past that because, again, that's not the big part of the movie of what it is. I want to ask you a question. You mentioned Walmart. You mentioned Walmart.
Yep.
In the Walmart scene, there's one thing that I think was on purpose, an homage to the MCU. Do you remember any of it? So it's a scene that involves Paul Rudd, and he's shopping. And there's one thing that I picked out on the first time, and Taylor was like, what? So I had to rewind it and watch it.
I'm not even going to attempt the level of knowledge that you would have to make this connection.
So Ant-Man 1.
Yep.
Paul Rudd gets out of prison, right? He's in prison. He gets released. He gets a job. He gets a job at a place called Baskin Robbins. Yep. And the quote is always, Baskin Robbins always finds out because they found out a bunch of criminal records. The place he's shopping for in Walmart, and he's in the ice cream cooler, is Baskin Robbins ice cream.
That's pretty funny.
And I'm like, it might just be that Baskin Robbins was willing to pay a product placement fee to be in the movie. But it also could be somewhere in there, be like, oh, Paul Rudd, people know him, pop culture. Bam, we'll put a little reference to Ant-Man in there.
I can see that.
The following scenes are tiny, so ant-sized Stay Puft thing.
That's what I was gonna say, but I knew that was like way too glaringly obvious of an answer.
And so in the original movies, Stay Puft gets big, right? Yep. I love the fact that there's these tiny little gremlin style Stay Puft things, and the things they're doing to each other is
I loved that
hilarious. Melting chocolate over each other.
Oh my god, the blender,
the grill, like they're walking across the grill on, and they're like melting into the grill. Oh, all that stuff was just like, oh my gosh, they must have been sitting in their writer's room. Like, what can we get these little Stay Puft things to do? And they're like, oh, but it melts and it walks across the grill.
I loved it. I heard a video somewhere, like, where they're talking about how some people like don't like that scene, I guess, because they're like, why would the Stay Puft was Gozer turning into something? Yeah. But one of the guys I was watching, of course, because this is my point of don't pick this apart, it's fun. I was like, my immediate assumption was just like Gozer's back and kind of remembers Stay Puft marshmallows. Because I loved that scene. That was one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. It was the whole marshmallow bit.
It was amazing. And it was like, he's just shopping and these things, and you see them start pulling, like the marshmallows start moving, and they like, and I rewound it and showed Taylor this. When one of those Stay Puft marshmallows falls out of the marshmallow bag and hits the shelf. You've worked in retail. You've worked with those shells, the yellow or the manila shells that have the little holes at the front, and it hit it. And when it stood back up, it had little dimples on it from the little holes.
Awesome.
It's like, who's thinking of that? Someone else who's worked in retail and put those shelves up before has thought about that. And they're like, wouldn't that
exactly? And that's why I honestly, like you said, I mean, it makes production much cheaper, but like this, I love scenes like that in Walmart because we all can relate to that. And like you said, and how many people that love this movie have worked, you and I have worked retail many years and in stores. And so like you immediately connect with that. It's like you or I, anytime we see like a behind the bar scene and we're like,
exactly. I mean, I'm watching Jessica Jones. I mentioned off recording and watching those again. And in Jessica Jones season 1, Luke Cage is working behind a bar, and it's like, oh, I know he's like cleaning a glass, which is always funny. Who sits there cleaning a glass? Like, we have dishwashers and dryers. Like, there's no one sitting there wiping a glass off like
for like 20 minutes. Yeah.
The same glass. Like, okay, that glass is, the logo is now worn off of that glass, because you've been wiping it so much. But the idea that cool special effects was necessary because you can't really make practical effects of Stay Puft, but then the more practical effects of Gozer of the monsters. I mean, in the coming through and diving through things and things like that in Walmart was great. Obviously, product placement for Walmart. Obviously, they must have paid for that because the scene of them in the parking lot has a big Walmart sign in the background. But it was just the mixture of the two special effects to go back on that. It was awesome too.
And I loved, just that whole Walmart thing in general is funny because there's always been, like, as we know, odd product placement in mean, people say Ghostbusters, but like it was just the 80s, man. Like you could be watching the most serious drama in the world and they'd be like, you know, I was gonna jump off the bridge, but this cup of Sanka coffee really changed my mood. Like that was the 80s accepted. I love that they still play with that. Like everything is branded in this movie.
They were like, yeah, because back in, oh, look at this. I'm not gonna have a sip of coffee. Or maybe I will have a sip of coffee. This Marvel coffee mug is pretty cool.
Yeah.
My dad did a whole, like, my dad's a pastor. He did a whole sermon one day on back when I was a kid. And the only reason I remember is because about product placement. I don't even know anything else that had a connection to the church at the time. But I do remember having to do with product placement. And from that point on, and then I also took a film class in high school where they talked about product placement, and they literally can't get through a movie without me going, oh yeah, they wouldn't have put Coca-Cola there if Coca-Cola didn't want them to have it there. Right. Walmart wouldn't have been Walmart. It would have been Supermart or whatever it is from Superstore, the show Superstore. It would have been that. So Walmart definitely was contacted about, hey, would you like to pay to be in the movie and so on, and Coca-Cola and all those other ones. That's why if you see an off brand, it's because they couldn't get a sponsor for that.
Of course.
If you see the brand, it was paid to put in it. So maybe that helped on the $75 million budget. Which is funny because I forget what movie we were watching. Oh, Silence of the Lambs.
Yep.
So we were watching Silence of the Lambs. We talked about this last week, and that movie was filmed for $19 million. It made like $300 or $400 million in the box office, which is, for, you know, obviously back in the 90s, it's great. The fact that they made a movie for $19 million also fascinated me. The fact that this movie was made for $75 million. I mean, blockbuster films that are going to make a couple $100 million in the theaters are made for $100 million. Like that's just the way the movies are made nowadays. And so a $75 million budget for this film was honestly pretty respectable, I thought. But, you know, with the special effects, practical effects, and the actors that are in it.
Oh, and the casting was great. I absolutely. I still at times, do you mind just go like $75 million?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For this,
Adam, I don't want to spend $75 on something. I don't know, $75 million. But just to know that you invest, you put $75 million into something, and it comes back. I mean, for this movie, almost 3 times as much back, and they put it out in the middle of a pandemic. So they probably made up a bunch more money on direct to when it came out digitally, because a lot of us, like myself, who didn't want to go to the theaters, watched it digitally. So they've obviously made some money on the back end. But yeah, it's $75 million. When I think about it, Infinity War was made for like $250 million. It's like, geez, bro. That's like
someone like Justin and I always doing pop culture. I'm not criticizing. I mean, the amount of the scale of like work and infrastructure and knowledge that goes into making. I mean, I understand. I just at times I'm like, I try to wrap my head around $75 million for one movie. But like I said, the point is, it's a lot of people doing a lot of expert work. So
and so I mean, you have cast. I mean, the cast is pretty. There's no like no names people. People. So I love that Muncher was Josh Gad, who was isn't he Olaf from Frozen? He's also a bunch of other things. But like, I just think when you see his voiceovers, you see Muncher, and all he does is go rum rum rum. I always love that stuff. It's like Vin Diesel being Groot. You say I am Groot, and you get paid how much $1 million to be that person? Anybody could have did it. Someone on the special effects team could have stood behind a microphone and going, I am Groot. See, I did it. Pay me $10 million.
I have so this is for a future episode of our podcast, but did he just pre-record a bunch of I am Groot, or was he there like I am Grooting right in with the rest of the cast? I hope it's the second. I'm going to believe it's the second.
Well, it's the same thing as I don't believe when I found out and watched Rocket Raccoon and see that's Bradley Cooper as a thing. You tell me right now, if you close your eyes and listen to that, I would not hear Bradley Cooper. You maybe if you matched up on a computer screen somewhere, the inflections in his voice and things you can match up, that's him. But again, it doesn't sound like Bradley Cooper to me. So why was Bradley Cooper cast as him? Same thing with Vin Diesel. Is it a name? Exactly. Guardians of the Galaxy featuring Vin Diesel. Maybe that helps sell film. I don't know, but I would think that they did a bunch, like one day in the studio and just did all these different versions of I and Am and Groot, and then we're able to affect it and do special effects. But I would hope that he's actually on, like, just drinking coffee.
Yes,
he's like,
hanging out.
Vin Diesel, you're up.
It makes me think of when we talked to Dana at Bangor Comic-Con about voice acting. And remember, he told us about like a table read where he was like, they told me specifically they want it to sound like me, and they're like, oh, you're not getting the job. And he was like, what? And he was like, they just want to hear how they want it to be. They'll hire somebody else to do the voice. Like, what? Bradley Cooper.
Yep, exactly. So I actually I had another conversation someone had about Dana Snyder the other day. I got to reach back out to him. We got to get him back on the podcast.
Yeah, totally.
He owes us.
Yes.
He owes us. I want to tell the story, but without telling the story, because what we didn't end up working out.
Yeah. But we still had a blast.
We can still talk about it, just not, we can't give you the details on it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're recording on something that has a signature on it right now. But yeah, so the movie was great. Everything's great. So we knew, kind of like what we're doing nowadays with these soft reboots and things that moving forward, they're gonna pull in, even if it's just to pay respects to the older films. You're gonna have people show up just to be like, even if they're not the same character. Like in movies that reboot, you're like, oh, look at that guy in the background. He's spying an ice cream cone. That was one of the original characters from the original movies. They're just kind of like giving him an homage.
Exactly.
They didn't do that with this. They actually brought back the original characters of Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson. Annie Potts came back. Those people came back, and they came, the three of them, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and Ernie Hudson came back in a big way, helping to fight off the ghosts in Ghostbusting, which is amazing.
And I that was huge. I mean, that's what had to be done. That's why the other one wasn't successful. Like they had to, because maybe we file it away as a comedy, but like it had Bill Murray in it. Bill Murray is a legend. The fact that he even came back for 5 minutes blows my mind. Like
absolutely. And so here's the way why I say they did it the right way. They did it the right way in this film because the movie was successful up to that point, in my opinion. They did the job of making the new Ghostbusters movie before they added Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson in. It just made it from a 8.5 to a 9, in my opinion, because they were able to bring those cast members back and have a 10 minutes, 15 minutes of screen time out of the 2-hour movie. And that to me did the right thing. They didn't make it the story of the original Ghostbusters in this movie. It was a story of these young kids and this family remembering their grandfather. And then at the end of the movie, they're like, oh, we need help from the original Ghostbusters, and they showed up and so on. So that's why I think it was successful. It was able to for us to be like, oh my gosh, the original Ghostbusters. But again, if that movie didn't have that, I don't think I would have given it a 6 or a 5. It would have been still around that 8.5. The fact that they did that was like, oh, cherry on top. Did it the right way, and they didn't make it about them.
Yeah, and that was my point. That was such a hard thing to do because it's such a heavy kind of cast from the 80s. I mean but the thing I think I also, while we're on that, I thought was one of the brilliant parts of the movie was, unlike every movie, like things did not go well for the Ghostbusters in the ensuing years, right? So I think that made a fun narrative because, in fact, a lot of people, you struggle with this thing that you build and then it just doesn't happen. And what I love, though, is they all end up exactly where you think they would be in this movie, which again is such a great fan service because Egon, who in the original movie was already very concerned about the coming of the end times. So that's normal. And Peter Venkman went back professionally, but into marketing. I love that, not psychology. And then, and then Winston is wildly successful. And I mean, it's just, I love, and Ray is in an occult bookshop and nobody's life is great, except maybe Winston's.
Yes, exactly. And then we'll talk about that in a second with the post-credit scene, but they were able to do it, and they were able to do it in a way that connecting those people back. It also shows it's kind of funny. It's like the professional athlete that when they're done being a professional athlete and they're not the superstar athlete, they're working at a Starbucks or whatever. It's the idea that these guys were like on the news and in the newspaper and they're busting ghosts. And when the ghosts stopped needing to be busted, there was nothing else for them. They got this huge fame for it and then went down. And you saw that Dan Aykroyd working in an occult bookstore and so on. And the other people had to move on. They retired from busting and they had to get new jobs and so on and so forth. It was nice too to see that they didn't just say, screw it, we don't have all 4. We don't have Egon.
Exactly.
So we're not going to do this. But they also, with the modern technology, we talked about the mixture between practical and physical effects or digital effects, is they were able to bring back Egon. And it looked like Egon. Like I will tell you right now, like it looked like they aged him well. They did a very good job on him. So Bob Gunton was credited as Ghost Farmer, and Ivan Reitman, so the original, one of the original movie creators, portrayed the living and ghostly versions of Egon in person. Then they used prosthetics and digital makeup to make it look like Egon was still there, which was great. I think that was a way to respect him and way to do it in a way that was amazing.
It was great. I know one of the interviews, I think Jason Reitman says that he had went to the family and was like, I want to base it on Egon from the 80s and how we think he would have aged, not modern. And I remember he said the family like loved that and thought, so I thought that was a really neat, like thoughtful way of doing it, that like this is an aged Egon. Like,
and they, because the thing about it, they made it like, it's always the question about ghosts and afterlife and all this other stuff is like, if you die right now, are you a ghost that looks like Adam Morrisette now? Or are you a ghost of you in your 20s? Are you a ghost of you? Like, you know, all those things, like, you know, same thing with eternal life. If you got eternal life, does eternal life mean you continuously still get old? You just get slowly old? And like, when do you stop having this like progression of body decay? Same thing. So they were able to say, no, this guy is older and he's dead. Like they didn't show him from the 80s. They showed him from when he would have passed more recently, which was great. I thought that was amazing. And the end of the movie was great. And the idea that he had the whole thing set up at his house, his farm, to kind of, you know, he knew it was coming and all these things. So, you know, get to more details of the movie, watch the movie. It's a great movie. But they were able to, you know, stop it with the help. And it's cool because it was the help of Mckenna Grace's character, Phoebe. And the fan, like that's the person who was able to help on top of, because Egon couldn't help as much. So that was really cool. I like that aspect of it. And the fact that they were at his house where he like kind of retired to in this small town. The movie ended great. And then there was the mid-credit scene and the post-credit scene, which were even like, were like fan service up the wazoo, in my opinion. Time. The post-credit scene, or sorry, should I say they're now changing them to mid-credit scenes and post-credit scenes, is pulled from the original. The post-credit scene pulled from the original, like pulled the idea from the original movie where Bill Murray used to do the whole shocking someone if they could guess the symbol on the other side of the card, and that he admitted to Sigourney Weaver that he used to shock the men and not the women, and he'd hit on the women and then say, you have a gift, maybe we should get dinner later, and so on and so forth. Which honestly, when you watch the original movie, you're like, that's creepy, dude.
It's super creepy. It was creepy then. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I had a friend recently who was joking about how he actually has for years joked about how creepy Peter Venkman is. But I want to say, yes, he was creepy. Like that's a feature, not a bug. Like,
exactly.
he was a creepy, weird psychologist, dude. Like,
and that's what he did when he went to Sigourney Weaver's house in the original movie and checked things out. He was like literally basically asking her for dinner and have a date with him and all that stuff. It was like this. He was the kind of guy that you don't want as your bartender, in a sense. Like you want a bartender to like kind of hit on you and so on and so forth. Like you know, try to get.
He takes it too far.
Yes, he's not the guy who pays attention to that one person at the bar and then tries to take him home at night. Same thing. He does that. So it's funny how he admits it. So she shocks him and gives him a little jolt and so on. The funny thing is, I don't know if you pulled this. I only found this out because I looked it up online a little bit, is at the end of the movie, the first credits. So you have the credits that are like cool design credits, not the black scrolling credits. It says and Sigourney Weaver at the end of it. And if anybody knows, if I've seen this film, Sigourney Weaver wasn't in the actual proper film. So you're like, what the heck? Well, immediately after that is when this thing is. So she only came back for the post-credit scene,
which was brilliant. Honestly, I loved. I mean, that was amazing.
And so they had this whole back and forth with them, which was funny, and I liked seeing them. And honestly, out of all the characters, I think Bill Murray's the only one that's aged horribly. Like everybody else looks great. Like Ernie Hudson looks absolutely amazing. Deanna Arquette's
Ernie Hudson's like aged like 5 years.
Sigourney Weaver looked great.
Looks amazing.
What's her name? Annie Potts, Janine Melnitz on the show. She looked great. Like all of them look great for their age. And it's just like Bill Murray looks like he's decaying. I love him, dude. He's a great dude. I love him. Like,
he's definitely aged.
Yes.
Because he's out there, man. I mean, he's out there still partying pretty hard, I think. So
I think so too. Yeah.
That puts on the years.
One of my favorite Bill Murray roles of all time is Zombieland.
Oh God, yes.
Without it's so funny they go to Bill Murray's house and he's actually there and he gets shot. Spoiler alerts. Gets shot because he's pretending to be a zombie. That's so great. It's so Bill Murray.
And you don't get any spoiler alerts on Zombieland.
No.
Zombieland's
been all out long enough. I'd love to do it. I want to watch Zombieland.
That was one of the best surprise scenes ever. Like,
and you just don't see it. Like they're like, oh, we're at Bill Murray's house, and you're like, oh, that's funny. And all of a sudden, I know where Bill Murray's there, and he looks like a zombie and gets shot, and actually dies because he's pretending he's playing a joke on someone. It's like I feel like that's how Bill Murray would actually die in real life. It's
fantastic.
It's like the epitome of Bill Murray. So then the black credit scenes, like the two traditional credit scenes go up, and or credits go up, and it's a cut. I don't know if you knew this. That actual clip of the post credit scene was cut from the original movie.
Yep.
And so it was supposed to be in the original movie. It wasn't. They used that scene in this movie. It was a coin that Egon gave to Janine. Janine has the coin. She's like, she gives the coin to Egon, right? And then he goes, I don't want to take this from you. She goes, that's okay. I have another one at home.
Yep.
That's for just a lucky coin. It's okay if you lose it. I have another one.
Yeah.
And so she has it, and she's waiting for Ernie Hudson's to meet with Ernie Hudson.
Yep.
And they show like intertwine the shots of the original building. The car pulls in. Yep. It's cool. It's like nostalgic. The blinking red light at the end. It cuts to the end. So let's have a quick discussion on this. So it sounds like what they're doing is they're going to set up some sort of ghost first, that they're going to be creating another one of these movies. And it seems like you'd think that like Phoebe and or Grace McKenna and Wolfman, whatever his name is, Finn, would come back, that Carrie Coon would come back, that maybe Paul Rudd would come back, and they do another Ghostbusters that maybe is featured in New York because they moved back to New York or whatever it may be. I read online that could Winston be the Ghostbusters version of Nick Fury, where he's like,
it could be
he's like controlling it. He's the person that's like overseeing it all. He's the one with the financial. He's gonna be able to financially back Ghostbusters now because he actually has money because of his big successful career.
While we're on that, and this is, I said, we can have fun with this because I love this movie. This isn't a picking apart of plot holes, but this was my one. Annie and I were watching, and I was like, wait a second. So couldn't he have just he was paying his electric bill for a while? Why didn't he just send him all the equipment he needed to do that? Because ultimately everybody in the world almost died because his weird janky contraption didn't work. And I feel like Winston is a billionaire. It's like Batman sending you like popsicle sticks and glue and being like, here you go, buddy. Yeah.
Try to fight it.
Like I said, this is a fun movie, so we don't have to worry about things like that. But I was like, but he didn't even have new equipment.
So and again, that's funny. I didn't even think about that. See, that's the thing is, you think that's one of the reasons we like having this discussion. Exactly. I didn't think about that, but that makes sense to me now. It's the same talk about putting holes on things. Nothing's perfect anyway. There's always plot holes in everything, but they're trying to make a movie here that we don't make. We don't make motion pictures. So, but the idea that they would still, again, it sounds like they're still going to have some sort of the old Ghostbusters still intertwined into the new Ghostbusters films, but more of a secondary role, that the main roles are going to be taken by these kids or teenagers. And obviously it's probably going to be a couple of years before another one comes out. And so these kids will be older. So they'll be young adults in their 20s, and seeing that happen, it would be really cool. And seeing what happens to that blinking light. Is there ghosts that are in the ghost traps that are going to get out and so on? They're going to have to fight it and call those kids from
it be great.
Middle
it could
America
be a great
to New York City.
Series. It could be, and I have to say, on top of that little plot hole, let me say, my Annie corrected me immediately when I said that she feels strongly that the whole point was that this was friends who drifted apart and started not believing each other like they used to, and that's the whole point, is they come back together at the end. So it's probably not a plot hole. If Annie thinks it's not, she's probably right. So
she's definitely smarter than both of us.
Yes. So
combined,
it's probably the correct answer.
But yeah, so I think it's gonna be cool. I'm excited. I definitely think that this is a high 8s, 9s for me if we were giving it a rating. I think it was a movie that a family can sit down and watch, and the parents can be nostalgic and watch it, and the kids, again, they were able to cast. One of the things I think they're smart now with casting is, first of all, there was not a single weak link in the cast, in my opinion. Everybody was great. But putting someone like Finn Wolfman in there from Stranger Things now connects it to, first of all, Stranger Things is a supernatural show. So it connects to a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid who likes watching Stranger Things can go, oh, I know that character. And then you and I can watch it and go, oh, I know Bill Murray. And so there's that connection that's really good. The Paul Rudd part too is the people in the middle, the people who know him from 40-Year-Old Virgin, but people also know him from Ant-Man and stuff like that. So I think they did a great job making the cast fit all generations that would watch it, and makes it so that kids can now have their own Ghostbusters.
Agreed.
And I think without tarnishing the original Ghostbusters.
I'm glad you said it, because that's the other. I think casting someone from Stranger Things was like the smartest. Whoever made that casting decision should be making all casting decisions, because you're right. It immediately plugged the younger generation in. They already know it's supernatural. Okay, fine, boom, and like that's just brilliant. Like that it really probably could have made a huge difference in the movie if they hadn't. I think for how many people really watched it.
And obviously financially, it's harder to get people who are already accredited, but like it makes sense long term to why would you go somewhere else if you could already someone who's already been acting in a supernatural world, bring them in to act in a supernatural world. Exactly. It makes sense. And so, again, McKenna Grace has been in a couple of things since then. She was in, like I said, Designated Survivor. That's what I remember her from, but she was like the president's daughter who got like 3 lines and then she had to cry because her dad was going away or something. So she was like, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, what a great time she did acting in Designated Survivor. I just recognize her from that movie. Yep. They did make her look such like a I can't even think of the name of it. I'm not gonna think of it. She looked very nerdy, but very hipster. Yeah, very hipster in that movie with her like high-rise shorts and her glasses and all that stuff. It was like she definitely fit in with, again, the generational kids who are going to watch this movie and go, I like McKenna Grace as Phoebe. But yeah, that's really funny. And I like also that Paul Rudd wasn't a main character. Speaking about casting, he was there to help bring a whole cast together, but he probably was only on set for a few days, filmed some scenes, and then he was done. Whereas you could see that movies like this could lean on the people like Paul Rudd to be there the entire movie so that the movie can keep going. But yeah, I mean, if he's not even in the second one, I wouldn't bother me. Like, well,
and even that, I'm terrible, as you know, with actor and actresses' names. What's the mother's?
Carrie Coons.
Yes. I knew her from The Leftovers on HBO, which is another one, like fantastic under the radar show, which is what a great casting choice. She was brilliant in that show.
Oh yeah, and also she was actually this is the one that I got Taylor and she was surprised about. So in Avengers Infinity War, this Proxima Midnight is one of Thanos's like minions. That's Carrie Coons, but with a bunch of makeup on.
Oh man,
so that's pretty funny. So she has that connection to my Marvel world. But she was also the wife, the crazy wife who set up her husband Ben Affleck on Gone Girl. Yep. That great movie. I think Ben Affleck's one of the great movies he's made is Gone Girl, and it was based off of a book. But she was in that too. So she's been in some big things.
Oh, big
it was
time.
Really cool. So she has that clout to her. Like I said, Finn Wolfhard has this clout through him. Huge. Paul Rudd, obviously. You have your Josh Gad, J.K. Simmons, Bill Murray, Dan. There was the big names in this, and then you have the other characters like Podcast and Lucky, the girl who works at the diner that meets Trevor Spangler. So yeah, it'd be cool. I mean, I think it's a well-made movie and a movie that I'll watch again over and over again. And again, it's one of those things I definitely. It's at my age, Adam, but I'm watching. We're watching Revolution, the show Revolution. It used to be on NBC. I don't know if you saw it. It was J.J. Abrams was part of it. Actually, Jon Favreau was part of it. It was back on NBC 2012, 2013. It was only 2 seasons.
Really
about power going out and like all of power going out.
No, I don't remember.
And they don't know how to get it back. And it's a pretty cool show. I like it. But there's a sex scene or whatever. And I'm just like, why do they have to show that? Yep. And I was like, I don't know. This is me getting old or whatever. And I'm watching Jessica Jones and she's having sex with Luke Cage. And I'm just like, okay, whatever.
It gets like weirder and weirder, like too. Like now the odds of like seeing stuff like that with your parents are like 100 times what they used to be. And
it was Peacemaker.
Yeah.
If I would have sit down and watched Peacemaker with my dad and all of a sudden I know they just turn and it's like there's Peacemaker and Vigilante sitting in a bed with a naked woman, and I'm just like, and
her with him with the butterfly. I mean, that was like you said, it's different from even when we were a kid, and it's no less awkward now to watch with anyone. Like,
correct.
If I'd have been watching Peacemaker with you, I would have been like,
okay, so have you seen this new thing on Facebook? And so for me, this is one of those movies that's wholesome that I can watch with anybody of any age.
Exactly.
I can talk. Scott and Dana, who come into Owner Brewing Company all the time, was in there with their daughter Claire the other day, and we were talking about something, and it's like Ghostbusters Afterlife would be one of those movies where like, I just saw that movie, great movie, you guys should see it as a family because you can see it. Fun. I can't say. I had to like go over here and be like, you should see Peacemaker, but like only to Scott and be like, when they're gone, don't watch it with them in the house.
The kids or the wife. Yeah.
And so it was just kind of funny. This is a kind of a wholesome movie that I thought would be great to have. And I think, I don't know. I feel like if we would have started doing this podcast longer ago, we might have watched the first two and reviewed those as a prequel to this one, but all Ghostbuster movies are good. I don't care what anybody says about Ghostbusters 2. I will say I can't give any information on the 2016 reboot or whatever because I never saw it. So watch it on your own accord, but I don't. Yep. It's not necessary to see these.
Doesn't exist in my canon.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's like the Ghost or Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park 1 exists, I think, and I think 2, but they basically said that 3 wasn't existent at all. And then Jurassic World happened and then so on. Yep. So I think they're just doing that a little bit more now where they're like, okay, we'll keep the first one and then we'll continue on. We do the sequels that should have been done. And but yeah, I'd love to see Ghostbusters 3 that was supposed to be, but didn't they make a video game out of it?
They did, and it's funny. It sounds like when I watched some stuff about this, they very much incorporate that game kind of as canon. So I've played it, but I honestly remember nothing except like going around in a hotel where like all the hallways were bending, but maybe now I should play it to get the storyline. I know that what's the name of the Shandor? Ivan Shandor. He's a bad guy in the video game. I remember he's a ghost.
See, I just think it'd be fun to do stuff like that, but it's harder obviously nowadays. But you could take some of the storyline and incorporate it into whatever else is coming in the future. But I could see at least one more.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they made their money back, and they made their money back during a pandemic, and so I could see them doing at least one more. They've got probably the actors willing to do it, and then maybe 2 more. That'd be cool to make it a trilogy. And continuing on.
It could be a brilliant series too.
Yes,
I mean, like if it was like a lighter, more fun, I'm thinking kind of like episodic X-Files where like you don't have to worry about a bigger story. They just go every week and they do something. That would be fun.
I think that'd be great too. So I'm cool with that, whatever. And I think that the with that serious thing, you could even do a Ghostbusters verse, like I mentioned with Winston. There is the people fighting ghosts in New York City don't have to be the people fighting ghosts in the middle America. You can have them fighting ghosts out there and then have a separate group. So the TV show idea could be X, Y, and Z actors in New York City with Winston as overseeing them. And then the movie verse could be in, middle America with, the characters we saw in this with Winston over it. So like you could have this whole idea and having some of the old school Ghostbusters existing as their parents. I mean, we're all about the universes right now.
Oh, of course.
And so it
could be like
a cool thing.
It could be like CSI. You could have like Ghostbusters Las Vegas, Ghostbusters LA.
Can they do one like it's a mockumentary version of that?
Would be great.
Like an idea that's like so boldly version of CSI where like actually crime scene investigating ghosting.
That would
like
be
have
really
like
funny.
Have like the TAPS crew from Ghost Hunters there as a helpful team. Or filming a TV show. That would be even better.
That would be
a movie about filming a TV show about ghost busting.
Yes.
There you go. Like an office type.
Yeah.
Or the Office mockumentary. Like
the Office would be great.
We need another one of those. There hasn't been one recently.
And have like randomly like horrifying like ghosts and monsters, except nothing horrible ever happens. Like there's no blood, there's no gore. The monsters are terrifying, but then they interview them. Like that would be hilarious. Like
there was an episode of X-Files that was a spoof of Cops. One of my favorite episodes of X-Files with like their whole like the whole cameras running and they're doing interviews, and they're obviously Mulder is this is some sort of creature, and everybody else is more like, what are you talking about? It's just we're in the ghetto and so on. It was amazing, and they interviewed people and the lights and the riding in the car with the time on the car on the screen and all. It was very well done, and they're the only show so far that I remember seeing that done that well. Taking a spoof of another TV show and incorporating it into their own show, which would be awesome. But so I think it was great. It's definitely if it was still in the theaters and you were happy to go to theaters, I would say our ratings here on the podcast are stay at home and watch it digitally or go to the theaters. After seeing it, I would have said go to the theaters. It's definitely worth seeing.
It's definitely.
And if you're in the Bangor area, not sponsored or anything, but I just love Josh Moulton and Queen City Cinema Club. It is available digitally, so you can go to Queen City Cinema Club in downtown Bangor and watch this on a big screen,
which
with the chairs.
Could be super fun. Yeah.
Order some pizza or some drinks. and sit there and watch the movie too. Taylor and I said we did it last Monday, and we sat there and we go, the how far away you are from the screen and the sounds and the quality of the projector is not much different than being that far away from the screen in comparison at the Bangor movie theaters here in Bangor. So to me, it was like, obviously you don't get to see the movie when it first comes out, but if you're willing to wait, but you still want the theater experience, places like that are great because you just bring the movie. If you buy it, he puts it in his Blu-ray player, you rent the theaters, and on Monday they're half off. So it's $10 for the small theater for 4 people.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's
great. $2.50 a person.
Yeah.
So yeah, not that, like I said, they're not a sponsor of the podcast or anything like that, but I just thought that's a cool little thing to do. We'll probably go there again at some point again.
Well, now I'm thinking I might do that this week, maybe, or next week.
And you just go in the middle of the day and just be like, sit there and eat your pizza or get some tacos or whatever, and just sit there and watch a movie by yourself. You play video games there too, which would be pretty badass.
That would be cool.
Games, but yeah. So yeah, go see it, or don't go see it. Watch it on digital. I would have said go see it if it was still in the theaters, but
do you.
And I've heard Batman's good. So if anybody else wants, we've heard the Batman is good. It's dark. It's very dark.
Which no judgment. I'm excited to see the Batman. Yes. I sent you a meme the other day, but I want to say my ongoing like theory about DC Forever is it's going to keep seeing how dark it can get until nobody will ever watch it anymore.
Yes.
Which it's not this movie. This movie is huge and it's killing it at the box office.
Mm-hmm.
But it is. It's all, we joke about this all the time. Next time they'll lighten it up a little. Oh, no.
It is what it is. And you know what? Like I said, we talked about it. They're just different.
Exactly.
Worlds.
Totally different.
It's just different thing. And they want to get darker and darker and darker. Cool. Whatever. Exactly. But I've heard which is a good thing to hear, because I feel like the people who watch comic book movies are their biggest critics of their own things. And what I've heard so far, it's been done well. If you leave it as a standalone thing, that this is the Batman, it's not connected to the DCEU or anything like that, this is good. It's worth watching. Exactly. So I'm excited. We'll watch it when it comes out on digital for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm excited about it. I love Batman. Exciting. Man, what else is there to say? Go watch Ghostbusters Afterlife though, man. If you missed that because of the pandemic, it was huge. Blockbuster.
And the benefit is you have right now is watch number 1, maybe watch number 2, and then watch Ghostbusters Afterlife, because it gives you a little bit of reference if you haven't seen them in a while.
Yep.
Or do the Star Wars version of it. Watch the new one, then go back and watch the other ones to give you some reference.
I would watch the first 2 though, because like I've never seen more like fun, appropriate Easter eggs ever in a movie. Like it was amazing, but you're not going to get 90% of them if you don't watch them. So just go watch all of them. Have a Ghostbusters marathon.
Worth it. You can skip the one from 2016. It has nothing to do with the movie.
Doesn't exist.
Because it has nothing to do with the movie.
Exactly.
That's why I'm saying it has nothing to do with the physical, anything wrong with that movie. It just doesn't have anything to do with this greater universe.
Yep.
So there's no reason to watch it. It's the same thing I'll say right now is don't go watch the Ben Affleck's Daredevil, because that has nothing to do with the MCU.
No.
That has nothing to do with Daredevil. It has something to do with the fact that if you're trying to watch MCU movies, if you're trying to watch Ghostbusters movies, there's 3 Ghostbusters movies. There's 1, 2, and Afterlife. Done. But until next time, right?
Until next time. You just brought that full circle back to Daredevil. That's where we started off the air. So boom.
Exactly. We got some episodes coming out too, some pretty cool ones. So make sure you check out us on Facebook and all that stuff, because it obviously has all that information. End of this month, we're going to talk some Spider-Man No Way Home, because that's coming out on digital. So Adam will be able to see it.
Oh my God.
We're going to talk some Batman at some point.
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Paul's going to come back on. Paul and I are going to talk about whether or not to put your comic books in slabs or not.
Ooh,
so what's the benefit? What's the risks? What's the different places to do that? All that stuff. Hopefully get the guys from Bangor Comic and Toy Con to come on and talk about that. Last Ronin stuff, Doctor Strange stuff. Like there's a bunch of cool stuff coming out.
There's so much. Yeah.
So, and we're hoping if everything falls into place, the first week of May will be Star Wars week here on Capes and Tights. So that's exciting. I'm deep into Star Wars, dude.
I love it, man. I love it.
Like I'm listening to music. Like, have you heard of Life After Death Star? It's Biggie's album, Life After Death, that someone took and put Star Wars music in the background of it. So it's like the Cantina band, but with Life After Death songs over it. So it's awesome. So check it out. Hey
man, we'll have fun. I love it. I love that you're into Star Wars. I told Andy the other day, I was like Justin got me so much more down the Marvel rabbit hole. And I was like, now he's falling into the Star Wars rabbit hole. And I don't know what that means. Loss of productivity mostly. But,
exactly. Probably. But yeah, I know we don't really know how to end these things. So we're just going to
awkwardly fade out.